Hey there, welcome to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. If you want to be a part of the show, you might have some opinions on this next segment, 800-288-9227. You know, I do have a radio show, and I like to think I do what you would do if you were in my situation. You saw the Hunter Biden pardon news, came out and it's like, oh, well, I guess nobody better say anything when all the January 6th pardons come down. I would love to hear what a January 6th political prisoner thinks about Joe Biden getting to skate on all of his very obvious, real, legit crimes that are so well documented. We've seen hours of videos of him smoking crack and doing hookers and illegal guns and legally disposing of guns. We've seen the ledgers. We've seen the cleared checks from all over the oligarchs of Ukraine and Russia and China and Serbia and Kazakhstan. We've seen that money flowing through about a dozen Biden family members and apparatchiks and Rosemont Seneca partner firm. And we've seen some of those other checks, about 10% of them flow up to the big guy. And so we have this tornado of unpunished crime in D.C. that is still going to go unpunished. Meanwhile, my next guest, Larry Brock, a retired military veteran, did time for merely walking through our own Capitol building on January 6th. I bet he has some strong opinions about the Hunter Biden pardons. Welcome back, Larry.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you letting me back on the air.
All right.
Yeah, actually, I really do. What surprised me, honestly, was the scope and scale of it. I mean, a 10-year blanket pardon, makes me wonder what else he's been up to.
Well, really 11 years.
Let's be underage women. Yeah, almost 11. You're right.
Yeah, so, and really, it's written in such a way that if we find out that over the last 11 years, Hunter Biden or Joe Biden had sold the nuclear codes to China, he's exonerated on that. If we open up the crawl space on one of his rent houses and there's 13 dead children under there, he's exonerated for that. He just gets pardoned for everything. But we've never even heard of a pardon like this, Larry.
No, we haven't. I mean, honestly, it's completely revolting, and it shows you just how bad our justice system has been perverted by the Democrat Party. I mean, the very words "equal justice under law" are on the front of the Supreme Court, and they make a mockery of it time and time again. And yeah, it's very offensive to me that for protesting, I'm going to spend more time in jail than Hunter Biden ever will. And I believe, like probably most Americans, that he's guilty of pedophilia, amongst other things. So. Much less potentially selling the nation's secrets to the Chinese, to the Russians, and to anybody that would buy them from him. It's honestly revolting, but I think the American people rendered their verdict on the Biden administration and rendered, if you will, their decision if it wasn't a trial by a jury on November the 5th. And I'm very thankful that they did that.
All right, well, you said a lot of black and white logical stuff there. I want to hear the emotional side of Larry Brock. When you heard the news on Sunday that Hunter's getting an unconditional blanket pardon, what does that feel like, knowing that you did time for your piddly actions on January 6th?
Well, again, I was highly offended as a patriot, highly offended that my country was again corrupted. But, I often ask myself, what would I do if I was in their situation? And, I feel bad for Joe Biden for having to compromise his alleged principles. I don't think he has any. But, I would have probably pardoned my son were he repentant and I were in Joe Biden's shoes. So, again, it's not anger at Joe Biden. I feel sorry for him. At Hunter, I feel obviously disgust at his crimes. For my government, again, it's just burning white-hot anger at the two sides. And again, even today, there was a man that was sentenced. We got news today that Mark Middleton, another good Texan that did nothing but pray outside the Capitol, is going to have to report to jail on the 17th. 4 trials of January 6ers began this week. So this government that let up on Hunter Biden, that basically threw in the towel, to cover Joe Biden's tail, continues to persecute good Americans, and nobody will stop them. I actually asked Ken Paxton today, again on X, to do something about this. I mean, no American has had all of their due process rights exercised, that has gone in front of a D.C. court. It is unconscionable what we are still doing to American patriots. And so the attorneys general of Texas ought to step up and put a stop to it. There ought to be some monkey wrench he can throw in this corrupt Department of Justice's works to slow them down and delay them until the legitimate president can again return to power.
I don't think there's anything he can do about that. I think that's out of his purview. Like, I don't even think he has a court to file it with.
Writ of habeas corpus, some type of due process thing. I mean, lawyers are great, and I'm pretty sure they could come up with something along those lines. I hear what you're saying, but I don't. He could say that these people have been denied due process, and I want you to prove that they've got it. There's got to be something a legitimate attorney general could do.
Larry Brock, if all the January 6 political prisoners don't get a blanket pardon from Trump, I think y'all should wreck shop until you do.
Well, I think we wrecked shop and look what it got us. No, I mean, I'm kidding.
Yeah, how about metaphorically wreck shop? Let's not break any windows or anything.
Yeah, no doubt. I think only 25 out of the 1,569 have actually committed real assault. There's like 110 total that the government's alleged assault. But yeah, I do see pardons coming forward. I still think that President Trump will do it on a case-by-case basis because he does believe in the rule of law. And I think that will bode well for the vast majority of us that were entirely peaceful.
All right, for the people who are hearing you for the first time, what were your crimes? Like, what was the name of the crimes that you were convicted on, and how much time did you do for these piddly things?
Okay, so it was obstruction of an official proceeding, the 15122C, the one that was overturned by the Supreme Court. That was the only felony I was convicted of, and that has to be theoretically re-adjudicated. And then entering a restricted area, parading and picketing. I think it was a disorderly conduct, even though I was...
Disorderly conduct? That's so vague. I mean, did they get you on jaywalking too, Larry?
Pretty much, yeah. Wearing matching shoes, I think, was probably one of the crimes as well. I mean, it was insane. There's a couple of other minor misdemeanors, but again, as you said, absolutely nothing. Testified on the stand. Our Capitol policeman did that I protected him. So, even yesterday, I saw an article in the Air Force Times come out, talking about how I was a violent extremist. These people are so lazy; they never do their homework. They never update their sources. All they're trying to do is continue to push their narrative. And I am so thankful for X and my opportunity there to tell the truth. So I'm at Larry Brock Jr. on X, and I encourage you to join me sometime. We had Beau French on today talking about how he kept or flipped Tarrant County from blue to red. So I'd like to have you on sometime as well.
Yeah, Beau French has been on the James Show before, too. How was Thanksgiving? Has the truth getting out helped reconcile you with your daughters?
No, my daughter and my elder son still, no. They're not doing anything. And quite honestly, I will send out another olive branch because, I believe as a parent it's always my duty to continue to reach out. But, I'm waiting for this all to settle down and for President Trump to give me the pardon. My family, they're wholehearted Trump supporters, but I'm going to be honest with you. I chose to spend it alone that particular day and then went to family the next day because it marked the 1-year anniversary of me getting out of the hole. I had spent 127 days at that time in the hole, and I just chose to be alone, just to not bake in my emotions, if you will, but it was just a wise thing for me to do.
And you're a retired Air Force vet. You spent your whole career defending the country and the Constitution,
yes,
and this is how they repaid you.
Yes, sir. But, again, I'm thankful that I've had the opportunity to serve my country. I wish it weren't under such trying circumstances. But, again, speaking up for the Constitution, which is what I did on the 6th of January, 2021, was still the right thing to do. And this election made it even clearer.
No, and you're right. And look, you may never win over the hearts of your son and daughter again like you deserve, but history will show that you guys are not political prisoners, but political heroes. Y'all were persecuted. Y'all were martyred for the truth.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you saying that. And I do believe with Cash Patel, we will get the truth out.
Larry Brock. North Texas, January 6th political prisoner on the James Show. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Well, they've got to be hot about the pardon. I'm dying to talk to a January 6er about Hunter getting to walk. I mean, we don't have hours and hours of Larry Brock smoking crack on video or doing hookers or waving around illegal guns or taking money from the Chinese communists. No, he walked through Statuary Hall. What a criminal. 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. You know, Dixie makes a good point. She's over here on Facebook, and I'm streaming live on Facebook. If you want to judge me based on my appearance, go ahead. But she says the number of people who would pardon their own child is concerning. What happened to no one being above the law? What happened to turning in one's own child for crimes? They're posturing. You know they're posturing, or I mean, some of them are. Some of them really don't care about the rule of law and would pardon their kid. Someone tried that on me yesterday. Well, you know, if that was your kid, you would pardon him. I don't think I would. I think if I had a guy who's 50, how old's Hunter Biden? Hang on, I'm gonna look this up. Hunter Biden, because it's not that like 54. There he is. Yeah, he's 54 years old. It's one thing if your kid's like 19 or 20 or even 25 and doing drugs. If Home Skillet's been on like a 35-year drug streak, I think a little time in the slammer might do him some good. If he has trouble putting down the crack pipe, being in a county jail will help that. Being in a prison for 6 months will help that. Hell yeah. If I had a 54-year-old who's been smoking crack straight up through the 80s, yeah, I might be okay with him going to jail. Yeah. Now, if my kid walked through Statuary Hall and didn't even knock over the velvet ropes on January 6th, didn't do anything, hurt anybody, break anything, or even raise his voice, helping cops pick up litter, and he goes to prison like my last guest, I'd pardon him. But no, it's not just a blanket. If it was your son, you'd pardon him, depending on what he did. If he did what Hunter did, I don't think I would. Of course, I'd never put him in the position to be the bag man for tens of millions of dollars of bribes, but what do I know? 800-288-9227. James in Fort Worth, you're on WBAP. What do you think, sir?
Well, President Biden said one of the points he made is he gave the pardon to Hunter because he was getting singled out because he's a Biden, which I can kind of understand that argument a little bit. But if he's being honest, which we know he's not with that statement, why didn't he give a blanket pardon to the Trump kids? Because they're Trumps.
Well, the horrible part of that is the reverse is true. The fact that he hasn't spent one day in jail, despite all the thousands of crimes that you have seen with your own eyes on video, shows what a privileged person he is. He's not being persecuted. This is probably the most privileged person in American history. The closest equivalent we have is Uday and Qusay Hussein. Remember how Saddam Hussein had the two sons that just went wild and they'd run through raping people and knocking people up and kidnapping people and doing drugs and doing whatever they want, crashing their cars, and they never went to jail no matter what level of hedonism they achieved?
Absolutely. I remember that.
Yeah. So that's Hunter Biden. And not only is he not being persecuted, he is the most privileged person in our lifetimes, at least in American history. And really, I can't think of anyone who's gotten away with more crimes. And because of his political connections, it was totally swept under the rug. Do you even have anyone who you could nominate who is in this category? I mean, Roger Clinton even went to jail.
Yeah, exactly. And I have a family member that kind of ties in this, that 20, 30 years ago was involved in drugs, and not just taking drugs, but was dealing drugs. And this person's father dropped a dime on him, and it probably saved her life. And she went to jail for it.
Right. Like, not only is it morally the right thing to do, like, even as a father, it's the right thing to do. I totally get that. And I'm confounded by the people who are they're just trying to pull at your heartstrings or make an excuse for Joe Biden doing something bad. Like, this isn't even what's good for Hunter. This is just what's good for Joe.
Correct.
All good points. That's why I like people like you calling in. It helps that your name is James, but it doesn't have to be. You can call in anyway. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. All right, coming up next, we have a lot of updates in foreign policy news. Canada, Russia, Israel. You're going to find out in 7 minutes from my next guest, David Hamilton from America's Future Series. He's going to be on the James Show coming up. If you have any other comments you'd like to throw in there, 800-288-9227. Also, blessedbethefruit.org is your home for Project 2025 implementation. Remember, single women of childbearing age, after you register with the National Christian Uterine Database, just let us know what size of the Handmaid's Tale outfit you need. We'll call them FEMA gowns for now, but you can register at blessedbethefruit.org. Blessedbethefruit.org. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's take a look at foreign policy. David Hamilton does a good job with that. He's our buddy from America's First series. And listen, America's Future series. David, I'm so happy to hear good news coming from the meeting that Trump had with Justin Trudeau. Are we buddies with Canada again?
Yeah. Kinda, right?
Right, kinda. There's still the threat, the possibility of a 25% tariff if he doesn't play ball, but it sounds like he got the message and wants to play ball.
Yeah, well, that's incredibly encouraging, and unfortunately, that's just a reality in the world. Sometimes you have to, manage through or lead through strength, and if people think they can walk all over you, they will. And Canada has done a number of interesting things to damage not only the United States but themselves. They allow a lot of their natural resources to be acquired by other countries, and they've been a big net loser of things like gold and steel, timber, and important things like lithium. And they don't do a very good job of protecting those. So maybe they'll protect themselves. All I know is we have to protect ourselves, and we have to protect ourselves from a national security perspective and our borders. And they're not our biggest issue, of course. The southern border is the biggest issue. But if people can't get in one way, they will find another, including the northern border.
Okay. So also I noticed that Justin Trudeau recently said that he's going to tap the brakes on Canada's wide open asylum and immigration policies. Are they really going to follow through with that? Are they getting the message too?
Well, that's part of this deal. We're saying the same thing to Mexico. Don't be a toreador. Let people come. Letting come people through your southern border up here. Yeah. Don't let same thing for Canada. We've talked about the carrot and stick idea, right?
Yep.
If we are doing trade with our partners to the north and the south, they are far less likely to succumb to other interests. The biggest interest, of course, is the cartels have enormous power in Mexico. They threaten the lives and the livelihoods of everyone down there. If I was the president down there, I would be afraid of them, and you understand that. But they need to be as afraid of us as they are of the cartels in terms of the economic impact. So if we impose tariffs, I think that'll bring them to the table. But when we're there, we would say, why don't we help, as the previous administration said, why don't we build jobs in Mexico so people want to stay there? So as part of the CHIPS Act, I've long said, let's build chip plants in northern Mexico, in Monterrey, so that there's a reason for people to want to stay in Mexico and not to become the United States because there are good-paying jobs. That's the kind of cross-border collaboration we should have, but that is only possible if they do not have this open turnstile approach of letting fentanyl, sex traffickers, the cartels, and terrorists into our country.
Okay, a couple of updates on the Russia front. We have Russia seizing new territory from the Ukraine, and it's not very big. It says it's the size of Singapore, but that's just like a city, right? And then 30 minutes ago, I had an update flash across my screen. Russia fires another hypersonic missile, this time in the Mediterranean Sea.
Yeah, so this is a pretty, each of these chunks is pretty good. If you think about Ukraine being roughly the size of Texas, let's say cut off the panhandle of the Big Bend area, then you have Ukraine. Okay. They've taken an area from Texarkana all the way down to Houston, about a quarter of the way across the country, across the state. So that's a pretty big chunk. And then basically you take Singapore, you're taking Houston, you're taking another big city, right? So these are big gains, and this is a really devastating, horrific war. We need to do everything we can to support the Ukrainians, not only from sanctions and weapons, et cetera, but, I do believe that when Trump gets in, they will try to find a way to negotiate a peace and a withdrawal. That is the best thing we could do for the Ukrainians, is find a negotiated withdrawal.
All right, so any updates on the Israel-Gaza front?
Yeah, I've long felt that the Israelis, on their own, without a lot of help from us, we have given them some support, but it's been tepid, would in fact root out, they had no choice, root out the terrorists in Gaza. That looks like that's happening. I'm hoping that by the end of the year, they will have lopped off the heads of the many snakes that are down there, and they'll be able to open that area up. Better yet, it would be nice if Egypt would allow the people who are suffering now to come through that border. They will not, citing security concerns. Interesting. So Israel's not supposed to have security concerns, but Egypt does. They need to let those people out for humanitarian reasons. They, of course, don't, because they, along with Hamas, want to see as many Palestinians killed as martyrs to undermine the position of the Israelis. And that is really a horrific pact.
Well, there was a Trump quote saying if we don't get these hostages back pretty soon, there's going to be hell to pay. Now, that sounds like a lot of bluster from someone who's a skeptic, but that's the kind of talk that worked with Reagan and Iran. You know, there was wheels landing on the runway while he's getting sworn in with all our hostages from the Iranian Revolution garbage. We may get a similar outcome here? Question mark?
Yeah. Regardless, we need to have that position, and hell to pay needs to be specific. I think at least now we're being much more specific. Ultimately, I think we believe that the Trump administration will give every single form of aid it can, technical, financial, et cetera, and also not call for ceasefires and, tepid responses.
God, that's so annoying. I'm so tired of that. I can't wait for that to go away.
Yeah. There's only one way to fight a war. If people are killing your people, you can't do that by negotiation. And that is the one criticism of the Israeli conflict, the Hamas conflict that I've had of this current administration, is they want to have some sort of balanced response. I'm sorry, people who chop people's heads off, rape them publicly, these are not folks that you can negotiate with.
Well, it's a paradox. You have the right to defend yourself, but not that much. It's like, well, can I defend myself or not?
This isn't a boxing match.
Well, and then also we had siege warfare finally make a return to civilization after like a 400-year absence, where they had surrounded Gaza and blockaded it off. And then what do? We build a dock and start sending in humanitarian aid to the people who are under siege. So what? They don't break. You just want the siege, the suffering to go on as long as possible. I mean, that seemed to be their goal, because that's the policies that they were pursuing. It's just forever war.
It may be simply misguided. They mean well, but clearly that's a foolish approach. We needed to, you have to have a full-throated, complete support of your ally. Otherwise, if you're aiding the other side, you are their enemy. Understandably, Russia thinks we're the enemy of Ukraine because we aid them, and we are.
We are, yes.
So we are the enemy of Russia. So if we are aiding, and even for humanitarian reasons, if we're aiding their ability to prolong that war, we're actually acting as an enemy of Israel.
Agreed. We're funding both sides of a siege. It's just, hey, let's run an experiment to see how long we can make these people suffer. David Hamilton, tell the world about America's Future Series.
We are a nonpartisan think tank and speaker series. We focus on issues impacting U.S. global competitiveness and national security. We host events from time to time. Please check out our website. We have a really great dual-use technology summit down in Austin. We have a nuclear energy summit that will be part of EarthX. We'll have our Cyberland Air, Sea, and Space Summit in September with General Petraeus, Admiral McCraven, Darcy Anderson of Hillwood, Bob Pragata of Jacobs Group. So that'll be a great event, raising money for military charities. And
your fact check for today's comes in true. Ukraine, 87% the size of Texas. So,
gotcha.
Nailed it. Thank you very much, David Hamilton. Appreciate it, bud. All right, coming up next, I'm going to get a little worked up about this, so pardon me if my head spins all the way around like Beetlejuice or Exorcist or whatever pop culture reference you want to insert here. But the congressional investigation into COVID released what could be their final report here, and it's even more maddening than you expect. I mean, it's kind of maddening. It's also kind of nice that you were, not only were you right, you were even more right than you could have possibly imagined. The damning information coming up in 4 minutes on The James Show. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.